Welcome to the Dogtor Bros, where we have an honest discussion around vet life in and out of the clinic. My name is Adam, and I am your doc of the day. As always, I'm joined by some of my closest friends from vet school.
Hi, this is Brandon. I'm a small animal internal medicine focused veterinarian in the Loveland, Fort Collins area in Colorado.
Hey, this is Chris. I'm a GP in North Carolina.
Hey, this is Jeff. I am a dermatology associate in Louisville, Kentucky.
And again, this is Adam. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to go about switching jobs in veterinary medicine. So before we get into the meat of today's episode, we're going to start off with a little fun question like we always do. And this one is veterinary related. So what is one of your favorite conditions or diseases to treat?
This is Jeff, and being a derm nerd, as we know, well, I only see dermatology cases, but I would say one of my absolute favorite things is performing biopsies, diagnosing pemphigus, and turning those dogs that are crusted head to toe and pustules and sometimes some secondary infection, like turning them into a new dog is extremely rewarding and so much fun to do. So I'm going to say pemphigus.
This is Brandon. In classic internist fashion, I like a little bit of everything. I think a lot of people that really enjoy internal medicine and are internists do it because there's always something different and like very different. Sometimes it's like a heavy urinary case, or then all of a sudden you're in GI, all of a sudden you're in hematology. If I had to pick one, I would probably say GI disease in general. In particular, like chronic enteropathy. That's like what my mentor was focused on. And it's cool because sometimes you just switch their food and they're all better. And sometimes you're doing some heavy diagnostic workup. So you get a little bit of everything in between.
This is Chris. I would say just about anything surgical, or at least GP surgical, I like doing. I guess my favorite thing would be treating or fixing cruciate tears. I do enjoy that procedure a lot and see them get fixed after I do the procedure, and it works out well. So yeah, that's one I would pick.
Yeah, and this is Adam. So for me, I really like the easy stuff that I'm able to treat. So, easy things like intestinal parasites, things that I can actually cure. I'll even take like a diabetic or like a cushingoid dog, as long as I can get them pretty well regulated. Those two as well, as far as endocrine diseases. I like diagnosing and managing those as well. So a little bit of internal med on that side as well. But things that I can fix, that's kind of what I like. All right, so getting into today's episode, again, we're going to be talking on switching jobs in veterinary medicine. When you feel like like it may be time for you to switch to somewhere else, and whatever the reasoning may be. So we'll start by kind of addressing that. So sometimes, there are some circumstances that, you can kind of address with management or, your coworkers and kind of work through certain things. And there may be certain things you can change, but there may be things that you encounter that are either kind of red flags for you in your job or are just more difficult to handle, that are a little bit tougher to kind of navigate. So with you guys, like in your experience when it comes to leaving a job, either with you personally or somebody what are some things that you've heard in terms of reasoning behind wanting to leave a specific job?
This is Brandon. I feel like just in general, like you wouldn't want to leave the job if you're already happy. So there's got to be something there that's either making you like your day to day like uncomfortable or difficult to do your job, or just mentally it's not good for you. So like I've had a personal circumstance where it was my first job after internship. At first I felt like I was a decent fit, and later on I felt like my I just didn't mesh as well with my boss. You know, my boss was fine. He's a good doctor and everything. But at the time, it was like, I think he had a very specific vision of what he wanted, like envisioned me to be practicing and how I was practicing. And that's just, it wasn't my style. And rather than getting maybe constructive criticism that I was expecting, it was more of like, this is how I want you to do things. And long story short, I ended up going to a different hospital. But there was a little bit of a process there. I was like, wow, I'm just like really not happy. And that took some time to kind of figure out, because you have good days and bad days, but if you're consistently having bad days and you're just not happy, then I think it's reasonable to start thinking about a change, whether it's a big career change or just like a change to a different hospital.
This is Chris. I mean, I would agree with Brandon there. It's kind of my first job out of vet school. I thought I was a great fit. It was a great fit. I did like the job overall, but then things just started changing in the practice. And again, like you said, it's not what you expected, especially kind of getting my bearings as a practicing veterinarian. I was like, just kind of looking for other opportunities. And that's how I ended up where I'm at now. But yeah, it was more of just like a combination of things. Just were like, all right, it's time for me to leave. And also I didn't like the schedule. I think for me, that's a big one, was the schedule. It was a rotating weekend schedule with on call. And I don't do any of that now. So definitely for me was the big deciding factor was the schedule.
This is Jeff. And I'll say there's a couple of things. I was kind of writing down some notes while you were asking that, Adam. And I would say some ones that came to mind, some a little specific, some more, I guess, abstract, would be like being undermined or disrespected regularly at work, and like feeling like you're not being treated like a part of the team, because it should always be a team environment. I also thought of like being pushed to see an excessive amount of cases, like you're taking on a lot, but you're being told that you're not doing enough, or even worse, you're not producing enough money. We need you to continue to see cases, and kind of being pushed to do things that make you feel uncomfortable. Like you should be focusing on the medicine, but it seems like the focus of the business is all money without the care for the patients. So those are things that are concerning that I've heard about in the past. And then there's others that are sometimes really, really challenging, like dealing with racism at work, dealing with sexual harassment, and things that are, even if they sound like HR obvious negative things or things that people can be addressed, it's still really hard to navigate that and leave some of those situations.
Yeah, I think you all hit on some good ones, and I appreciate you guys sharing some of your personal experiences with it. I kind of find it interesting that there's kind of like two big categories that I've seen, and kind of based on what you guys were saying too. It's like you can leave a job based on like a poor work environment, but also just not a good fit for you. So like what Chris mentioned, like the schedule didn't work for his lifestyle. So like that's not necessarily a ding against that clinic. That's just how they run business. It just didn't fit into his work style. So it doesn't always have to be like a terrible environment for you to make the choice that moving on is your best choice. That being said, you're probably not going to get everything you want where you are. You may have to make some compromises. But again, if it's to the point where it's just not a good fit for you and it's affecting your life, I mean, it's definitely something to at least consider, moving on to something else. And I've kind of had both. I've been at jobs where I've left because it was just kind of don't want to say toxic, but a poor quality work environment. And I've left jobs just because I felt like it wasn't the right fit for me. Like it was a good clinic, it was good people, but I just felt like it wasn't the right place for me to be. And so I've kind of done both. So I encourage people to, kind of explore the different options and kind of see what is out there. So, now say we've made the decision to make the switch. Okay. So like that initial thinking of, okay, I feel like this isn't the place for me. I feel like I do need to get out there and see what else is out there. what are some things to consider when we're kind of looking for a new job? I'll give just one example. So like type of work, do I want to be working in general practice, or do I want to work in like basically a new facet within my career? In terms of that, I will refer people back to a previous episode that we recorded with Dr. Teresa Coe, good friend of mine, episode 33 in season 2. It's the one about alternative vet med careers. We touched on several different options in terms of careers within veterinary medicine. So be sure to check that out when listening to this episode as well, because they kind of piggyback off of each other. But what are some other things that people should be considering when they're wanting to make a move to a new career?
This is Brandon again. Just really quick, I kind of thought of like a third category for you, and it's like kind of growth opportunity. So if you're in a space where you just feel like you're not going to be able to continue to, like, for a lack of a better way of saying it, like go up the ladder, like that's part of the reason why I ended up leaving my second job, and that's when I got into my residency program. It was very amicable. I was just like, hey, like this is what I want to do, and I got accepted, and I gave them a lot of time, so that worked out really well. But yeah, it's just another one of those kind of categories to consider if you want specific growth opportunities. I will say, for kind of like in the process of changing my first job, since I worked for VCA as a GP, I had the opportunity to kind of like go to a different hospital within the VCA network. So in a way, I kept my same contract. I was just at a new hospital, and at the little minor adjustments because the hospitals are all different. But that was a really easy way to like switch jobs without a whole lot of work on my end. I kind of just reached out to the folks that are in the manager positions that oversee the hospitals in the region. I was just like, hey, like I don't feel like I'm a good fit here. Are there any opportunities at some of these other hospitals? In particular, I was interested in a hospital I'd worked at for my internship because they had a GP program or a GP side, and that they ended up having an opening. So that's a really simple way to do it if you're in like a VCA or a Banfield or a Blue Pearl, or there's multiple corporate clinics out there nowadays. That's something I would consider before you just completely jump ship with a company that you're already working for.
This is Jeff. I was going to say some things to think about. I mean, I think salary is the obvious one. So I wanted to say, don't sleep on the benefits. So things that I didn't even realize were benefits for my current position in my current company is things like, certainly look at the off time, certainly look at the obvious ones like insurance options and things that work for you and your family. And then there's, I think the less obvious ones are things we don't always remember to ask about, like sometimes I travel for my job and we get travel coverage. There's rules, but there's a per diem to eat. I can, depending on how far I'm traveling, I may qualify for getting a rental car that's completely covered by my company. And so those are things that make my life a little bit easier as I'm doing certain parts of my position that I never really thought about truly until I kind of, I don't want to say lucked into this job because I specifically chose my job and my residency for a reason, but those are things that I didn't realize came along as a part of my job that were thought about that I really appreciate.
And this is Chris. I mean, you guys both pretty much nailed it. I mean, salary is a big factor for leaving from one job to the other. But if both jobs are the same salary, then okay, find something else that you would want to leave for. Benefits is a big thing that's kind of slept on. Also travel time. I've traveled. My first job actually was closer and my second job was further away, but the benefits and the salary outweighed me moving. So that's why, again, you have to kind of pick and choose. You can't have, you might have the dream situation where everything checks off your list, but again, you need to categorize like certain things over others. And so like the big thing for me was work schedule. So that's the big thing I switched for. But yeah, salary is probably a big factor, and location. And at that point, it's also just culture of the clinic of where you're going to. If you can kind of gauge it off of it's better than where you're at, then that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, you guys definitely hit the big ones, and I think you hit hit a really good one there at the end, Chris. This culture, which is really difficult to determine just on first impressions. Typically, you have to get in there and work for a little while before you get a good sense of that culture, unfortunately. But again, doing things like working interviews and meeting with the staff and kind of doing your own little interviews with them beforehand just to ask questions about the clinic, things like that can certainly help. And then Brandon, I really like what you said too about, another reason that somebody would leave a job is potential growth. If they're looking to expand and grow in their career. And that's definitely something you want to look for too. If that's something that's important to you, like where you're going, what is the growth potential there? Like if you want to become a chief of staff, if you want to become a medical director, if you want to work for a corporate office and work all your way all the way up to corporate, like, what is your end goal with your growth and development? So that's definitely something to look for as well.
And this is Jeff. Adam, I wanted to reiterate one thing you mentioned there that I think is super important. And I think I might have mentioned something like this a long, long time ago with like choosing internships or something like that. But you're right. Like you don't have a lot of control over what the culture is going to be like or what it truly is until you really get in there. It's hard to know. It's like when you're picking a roommate, but you don't know how they live until you really live with them. Like Adam, he was terrible. But when you're thinking, but one thing that you can, I think, is a really good move is when you do hopefully do like a working interview, make sure you're very intentional about talking to all staff members that you can. And you go ask the receptionist, like, do you like working here? What are things that you wish were better? What are some things that are terrible? Go ask the technicians, like, does anybody here just happen to hang out outside of work? You don't have to, but I do think it says a lot if a couple of coworkers do kind of get together for drinks or hang out every now and then outside of work because it makes it seem like you like each other. That's not for everybody, and not everybody is looking for that. But that's also something that you could say, ooh, that's a red flag for me if you're not a super social person. And you're like, I don't actually want to be that close with all these people. I just want to come to work and go home. Totally valid. But that's something that I noticed when I was on my working interview for my clinic that I kind of liked, because I saw that like my mentor, Dr. Griffin, like she loves her staff, buys them presents for their birthdays and hangs out with them outside of work. She invites us to her house. Like things like that mean a lot and definitely are something that are things to look out for.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good point because, again, it is hard to get that sense of culture on initial impression. But if you're going, especially like you said, you're going to the receptionist, you're going to the text, you're going to the other staff that isn't the people who are going to be your boss or your colleagues in sense of other veterinarians, but you're going to that support staff and kind of asking them questions to kind of gauge the culture, you can learn a lot. And again, that's vitally important because, again, you just get that snapshot before you decide whether or not to take that job. So again, yeah, I'm glad you touched on that because you can get a lot of information from that as well. So say, all right, we're ready to move on. We're ready to start applying. What are some tips that you guys have? And I know it sounds like a pretty basic process, but what are some ideas and tips you guys have in terms of like, okay, I'm ready to branch out, see what's out there. I'm ready to start applying. What are some things that people need to know or need to look for, things that you ran into in your experience when you were applying for other jobs?
This is Jeff, and I'll say, I know we mentioned this one on the co-episode, but it bears keeping in mind and repeating. It's like you really can't underestimate the power of networking because it looks so different for everybody. So whether that be going out to lunch with somebody, meeting somebody at a conference, for like residency path and internships, like I've mentioned it way back at the beginning of the pod in season 1, like episode 1 or 2. Like I met my mentor just chatting with people at a conference, and also our professor, Dr. Hubbard, who's our dermatology professor. I reached out to her via email. I was like, gosh, I hope you remember me. I'm this student from 100 years ago. And she was like, absolutely. How can I help you? here's this contact, and then was shoving me in front of the people who would end up being like a part of my new company. So that's something that you have to do, or reach out, use your resources, use your friends, see who knows who within your network, for lack of not using a buzzword, but it's really worth it.
This is Chris. I don't really have good advice on this, except I was applying for jobs outside of out of vet school, but like after that, I kind of got recruited to go where I'm at now, so I didn't really have to look hard. But yeah, definitely reach out, get on like LinkedIn. I think those are good options to get on. Honestly, with the current market of the way vet med is right now, there are recruiters and people knocking on everyone's door asking if you're looking for a job, because there is a huge need for vets. I probably get 1 or 2 emails at minimum a week about, hey, are you interested in a job in this area or this area? Are you looking to move? So if you're, depending on what you're looking for, you should be able to find a job. But the hard part is figuring out, is it the right job for you, and narrowing that down. I think that's going to be the hard part for you, is to look into, hey, is this a good fit for me? Looking more into the benefits, the culture, things like that. Having to do, if it's traveling, I would probably say do a Zoom interview first before you travel super far away, to make sure it's a fit for you. Or a phone interview. I know we recently hired a new veterinarian, and he's moving across the country. So I think they did a couple of phone interviews first, and then they finally met up in person once they were like, okay, we're going to maybe make this a formal offer type of thing, or a formal deal.
And Chris, I will add that your answer actually inadvertently kind of reiterated JT's answer, because you said you got recruited, but you got recruited by somebody you knew.
This is true.
Who knew you, knew your personality, knew who you were as a person and as a vet. So the networking really came into play and helped you with that as well.
That is 100% true.
Snaps.
Yeah. This is Brandon. I agree with you guys. Networking is key. And we all know, like, just being in vet med, it seems big, but it's actually a relatively small community, all things considered. It's not uncommon for me to like meet somebody, and then all of a sudden, they know somebody that I know from school or from internship or from now residency or whatever. One thing that I found helpful when I was an intern, I don't remember how I got on this listserv, but there's like a local listserv here in Colorado that someone puts out. I think it was like a recruiter out of internship, but I'm still on it. So like every month, I get all the openings across the state. So if you know someone like that, or if you know someone that knows someone like that, then you could get that kind of resource.
And this is Jeff again. So I would also add things like, so this isn't necessarily a networking one, but when I got my GP job, I looked on the AVMA and like put in my information, and was, like Chris said, I was like bombarded with emails and recruiters. And I did end up finding my first job through that in my area. And there's also things like, if you're interested, depending on what you're interested in, of course, but I think it's pretty easy to find a clinical job. And then, like Chris said, find one that works for you specifically, but don't sleep on your industry partners either. So just came back from a conference, and they're constantly, they have their ear to the ground or looking out, whether it be like food companies or pharmaceuticals or other types of less traditional jobs. Like, they're out there, and they also know people. So sometimes, even if you're just looking for another clinical job, they're often the ones that are visiting a lot of different clinics. And so they end up hearing about, oh, XYZ clinic in your area needs a doc. Yeah, you should check them out. And that's an easy connection right there.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, like we're saying, networking is key. I like what you guys said about adding your resume and name to the AVMA. I did that years ago to apply for a job after I had already been out for a little while, just because they needed that for me to like apply my stuff up there. And my name stayed up there, and I still get emails and phone calls from recruiters to this day. So like, that's a great way to get your name out there. And if you put it up there, they're going to contact you. And the work is there. And, at least from my experience in our area, and I assume it's several areas across the country, there is a need. So there are jobs to be had. So there's no shortage of jobs out there for you. So take advantage of that now. Find the place that's going to be the best fit for you and what you're looking for. All right, so we have our new job lined up. We're ready to go ahead and put in our notice. So what tips do we have for that? What's our best way to go about that from your experience or your experience with others? What are good things to do and things you shouldn't do in terms of quitting your job, putting in your notice, and the like?
So this is Jeff, and I'll say I think mine was pretty straightforward. So I've only formally had to leave one job because most of my positions just kind of, like my internships, they had a 1 year and an automatic end. But when I left my GP job, I literally read, like, we had a handbook, an employee handbook. I double checked the rules, which I think is important because if you leave too little notice, you could burn a bridge. Now, most states in the United States, I recently learned, are at will states. So you can just leave a job if you need to, like if it's a really bad situation for you mentally or physically, or something really serious is going on. Like, you need to leave. But I'd say most people are going to go through the putting in a letter of resignation. So I was required to put in 2 months time, which I think is obnoxious. And from what I heard, I'm not super unique. My sister's a PA, and she had to put in a couple of months in between her jobs.
My first job that I left it was 1 month, which is not a big deal. My current is a 3-month notice.
That's
Wow.
wild.
That's crazy.
It just shows you the state of where we are with how high of a need there is. And that's how much time they think they're going to need to get somebody else.
And like, I get it from the business standpoint of like, you want to replace me, but depending on how you feel about the clinic, it can be awkward. So I'm very fortunate. Mine was like all love when I left my first job, and we went out and like had dinner, yada yada yada, and it was like, we'll miss you. But I know that is not the case for other jobs, which can be really uncomfy.
Yeah, this is Brandon. Like, when I went off to residency, everyone was very much like that as well. They're like, just really happy that I had the opportunity to go out there and do it. And I had a lot of time. I have to look at the VCA handbook. I don't know what their minimum like requirements are, but I had given them like, I think 8 months, and I had known from a while back because I went like a non-traditional route for the residency program, and I found out really early. But my first job was unique because my first job outside of internship, I just like didn't have my relationship with my boss at the time was just not as great. And I just went to like kind of the people ahead of him in the regional department. It was just like, hey, like I really want to keep working here, like as far as the company's concerned. But I don't want to work at this clinic anymore. And they helped me find a job, and it was very amicable, and it was really relatively straightforward. So that was actually, I would say, a good experience. And I still have a good relationship with some of the folks in that kind of regional manager department, because I'm back in the same region again, back in Colorado.
This is Adam. For me, with my previous jobs, when I have left, because I have, unfortunately, fortunately, depending on the way you look at it, have moved around a lot in my short career. And typically when I've left, I've given a month notice, just kind of out of, I guess, common courtesy, which I thought I was doing, but hell, 2 months, 3 months, maybe I was shortchanging them. I don't know. I thought I was doubling the standard 2 weeks, but just being in a more professional setting, I feel like giving them a little bit more time is just kind of a common courtesy to do. Anytime I've left a job, I've tried to leave on good terms. I'm a big advocate of not burning bridges. I've touched on that several times in previous episodes as well, because you never know. Like, I've left places before on good terms, nicely, but in the back of my mind thought, I'll never be back here. And then a few years later, I was walking in the door with my stethoscope around my neck, ready to go. So you never know. So do not burn your bridges unless, like Jeff said, if it's affecting your mental, physical state and you just have to get out of there, by all means, you come first. But if you can stick it out that last little bit, give them reasonable notice. I definitely think it's worth it to give them some good notice and leave on good terms. So, all right. So as we wrap things up here, do you guys have any last bits of advice for anybody who is looking to or planning on quitting their job and moving into a new role?
This is Chris. As awkward as it may be to do it, definitely do it face to face when you are resigning your job. Put a formal letter of resignation in, like type it up. Kind of sounds old school. Or you can email it afterwards, but I wouldn't email and then go face to face, because then it's the whole thing. Like, I would just face to face say whatever it is you need to say, and then give them your official letter of resignation versus just sending an email, because that's not the right way to do it, at least in my opinion.
This is Jeff, and I'm just gonna. I don't mind the email ahead of time. I do think it depends absolutely where you are. Do I think in person's probably better? I mean, it depends on if you're going out on good terms or not. I think if there's something that could be misconstrued, or like you're leaving and you're making it clear that it is because of something controversial or really negative, then I think that's best handled more in person. But I think if it's something that's, I don't know. I don't even have a good way to explain it. I don't mind. I simply don't. I don't mind sending an email, but I do think you should follow up in person at the next reasonable time that you're at work. Like, it's not something you should sit on. But maybe I'm more new school.
At least just have a face to face. Like, I think my thing is, don't just email them and then like not talk to them about it, because then they're going to be like, what is this email saying? But yeah, I would say at least have a face-to-face conversation with them at some point.
It's saying y'all suck and I got to get out of here. Anyway, I wouldn't do that now. I really like my job. I really like where I work. So I'm just talking smack.
2 weeks from now, JT starting a new job.
Oh God! Oh, that would be so sad. That would be so sad. No one has anything to hear from me. I just bought a house. I'm not going anywhere. Okay, I'm pretty in.
Yeah. So I actually was just thinking back, and I have actually quit a job by in person, over the phone, and through email. So I've kind of hit the trifecta, I guess.
Wow.
But I would agree with Chris. The absolute best way to do it is in person. If it has to be by phone or email, follow up, touch base, especially with email. You can touch base over the phone, and basically the phone and email kind of came from circumstance. Those were bosses that I did not see in person nearly as frequently. So it's hard to get that FaceTime with them. But yeah, definitely follow up. Like Chris said, it's going to be awkward no matter how you do it. But you got to bite the bullet and do it. And really, the best piece of advice I can give for it is when you talk to them, just kind of reiterate that this isn't anything personal. You're just doing what you feel is best for you. Like them as a business, they have to make the moves that's best for them. And you as an individual, you have to advocate for yourself and make the move that you feel is best for you. So that's what I would say, is just kind of reiterate to them that, this isn't anything personal, strictly business. This is just what I feel is the right thing for me at this time. And I feel like 9 out of 10 employers are going to get that and understand that. They may not like it, but they'll respect it.
Yeah, Adam. And I really like what you said about, just to reiterate, like being an advocate for yourself, because unfortunately there are a lot of companies, even ones that say, we are a family. And I'm like, are we? And also like some families you don't want to be family with. So that doesn't always come with the context that you think it does. But a lot of companies treat people like cogs in the machine and things. So it's really important not to get too caught up in, well, what are people going to think? Like this, like Chris said, like it's going to be uncomfortable. You're just going to have to do what makes sense for you, but really being an advocate for yourself and what you need is the most important. And hopefully you're moving into a position that is better for you and going to be help you in the long run, or at least what you need now. Even if it's not a permanent thing, you're just like, I need to not be where I am and do something else. That is okay. So be a self-advocate, do what you need to do for you, and eventually the cards will fall where they may, and you can't control other people's reactions. So that's really important to keep in mind, is even if someone's going to have a really uncomfy reaction, you're going to have to let them have their moment, but you still need to stick to your guns and move on if you need to move on from where you're at.
Absolutely. So to end things out, we'll do another fun question for the group. This one is totally not veterinary related. So while we are recording this, the Olympics are currently going on. So I would like each of you to pick a Olympic sport that you feel you could beat all the other Dr. Bros in.
Yeah, so this is Jeff, and I think I would smoke y'all swimming. The only person on here who might have me, depending on the event, is Brandon, because I know he was a swimmer.
Yeah, we'd have to see.
I swam in high school.
Anyway, Adam is toast.
Can I use some floaties?
Chris is too lazy.
I'll just be on a raft.
A little worried about Brandon.
Yeah, dark horse.
I would take some offense to that.
Offense received.
This is Brandon. I was thinking tennis. I think I'm the only one that plays tennis here, or has played tennis. So tennis maybe, or table tennis.
Ooh, fun.
That's up for debate, though. I don't think I've played you guys in table tennis. I did end up watching some of it, but
I used to have one in Auburn that we had on the porch there for a little bit. But yeah, I thought about that too, Brandon. I think you're the dark horse for table tennis.
I would love to watch that match, that finals match between you two.
Yes. All right. Set it up for the future.
It's decided.
Chris, you had this whole episode to think about this. I would like everybody to know.
This was not a hidden question. No,
it was not a surprise. This was on the Google Doc.
Oh no! But you know what? I thought I forgot about it. And the table tennis was
shot put.
Shot put.
Well, this is Adam. I'll go while Chris is thinking over there. So I'm going to go with some sport that none of us have played before, because I think that's what I have the best shot in. So I don't know, something like fencing or gymnastics, or, I can do a balance beam. Let's go. So I don't know. I think that's my best shot. It'd just be a toss up between all four of us.
I think only the women's gymnastics do the balance beam.
I wasn't going to be petty and point that out, but
All right. Uneven bars, floor routine. I don't know what the men do. What do they do?
Horse.
Yeah, the horse thing with
do they
the
call
two
the
handles.
rings?
I
Yeah,
think it's just rings.
What are the rings?
rings.
called?
the rings.
Rings, yeah.
Just rings.
Rings.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I can smoke you guys in some rings.
I want to say basketball.
Oh,
Yeah.
I figured that one.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
toast.
probably true.
Yeah. Sorry, it was hard. I was like, what is
French toast.
Just wait till they make Mario Kart a Olympic sport, and I claim that one.
You claim it. I'm pretty sure that's probably the most evenly matched one.
Mario Kart?
Mario Kart.
Rewind the tape, my friend.
You're done. You're gonna have a bad time. I would say Chris is getting gold for Mario Kart, and then the rest of us are like beating up Adam for bronze and silver.
Falling off Rainbow Road.
Yeah.
I will not be on podium if we get on Rainbow Road.
Maybe Smash Bros. I could beat you guys.
You destroy me in Smash Bros. I would die in Smash. I'm the first one out in Smash Bros. I fall off the thing and die first.
Ooh.
Like that's how bad I'm.
I'm going for gold.
And I want to point out, JT did have a dad joke there. We are rubbing off on JT. Your French toast.
It's gone. Nobody heard it. No idea what you're talking about. Anyway, thanks so much for coming to the
gaslighting us over here.
I would never do that.
Thank you once again for joining us on the Dogtor Bros.
If you would like to support us, please share this episode with others who may be interested in today's topic, and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Would you like to influence our next episode? We love hearing your opinions and thoughts. Your comments may be our next topic.
Please leave us suggestions via email at thedoctorbros@gmail.com, DM us at thedoctorbros on Instagram, or leave us comments on our posts. Again, this is Brandon. You can reach me at DrMasonIM on Instagram.
And this is Chris, and you can reach me on Instagram at dr.chrishernandez.
And this is Jeff. You can find me on TikTok or Instagram at DermDrJeff, DermDogtorJeff.
And this is Adam. You can reach me on Instagram at DrAdamDVM. That's DrAdamDVM.